Screw it.
I'm sick of it, all of it.
12% for a legendary.
10 epics from Shards? How about that?
Legendary.
Where's the guarantee? Where's the guaranteed legendary?
Another epic. And again, Chinaru. Damn it. $975.
Just to get this champion?
Hello viewers, how are you doing? Today we have X2 on Sacred Shards. We will open 100 Sacred Shards today. As you can also see, we have X10 on this wonderful champion, Alatrian Blademaster. I hope to get him as well. It looks like a good champion with excellent support abilities. Let's see how and with what chance he drops on me today. Is X10 really on him? By the way, if you haven't seen the previous episode where X10 was on the Doom Priest, here it is. You can watch it. Today the game promises us 88% for epics and 12% for legendaries. I hope we have more than 12 legendaries today. Let's see how it goes. After all the previous openings, I cleared the inventory and only have 4 champions left. So we will start opening the shards. Folks, this episode concludes the first season of shard openings. If you like my shard opening videos, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification button. That way, when I start the second season of shard openings, you will see the notification and come to this video to enjoy quality content and shard openings. I am extremely interested in what will drop today. By the way, taking this opportunity to remind you that we have a small section right now, right in the comments. How many legendaries do you think I will get today? I think more than 12. Let's see who can really guess. Now viewers, are you ready to open 100 Sacred? Are you ready? I'm not ready. By the way, I'm skipping epics today. If a good epic drops, I will just say good epic and move on. Today we will focus on legendaries. And unfortunately, we cannot open 10 Sacred Shards at once, so we will open them one at a time. Here we go. The first Sacred Shard. Bam! Epic. By the way, in the last shard opening, we already got this champion. You already know about him. Let's move on. Next, another epic. By the way, Vergis is not bad. But for PvE, let's go to the next shard. Legendary. Oh, okay, Mountain King. Let's take a look at this champion's abilities. A1 attacks an enemy with damage based on HP and attack. A2 attacks an enemy and ignores 50% of the target's defense when the ability is upgraded. A3 attacks an enemy, also ignoring shield and block damage. And the fourth passive ability increases his damage by 50% each time he kills someone, stacking up to 100%, and it resets every turn. I wouldn't say this is a great legendary, but it'll do. Next, the epic Gizcard the Sigiled was summoned. Another epic, Chinaru. You viewers know her well. Viewers who follow our channel know that this champion is excellent for epics. Skip.
Another epic.
Epic. Legendary! Well. A1 attacks an enemy and applies a defense buff to that champion for 2 turns if the hit is critical. A2 attacks all foes and applies a defense debuff to foes for 2 turns if the attack is critical. A3 attacks 1 foe and ignores 50% of their defenses, and if the ability is upgraded, the defense ignore becomes 100%, and there is a little aura that increases the attack of all allies in all battles by 38%. Another epic. Well, what can I say? I opened the first 10 shards, 2 legendaries from the first 10 shards, you know? That's not bad. These legendaries are not the coolest, but everything is still up for grabs. But let's get away from the discovery of the Sacred Shards. If you are a spectator of newcomers, or veterans who want to create a new account and get cool epics, open the link in the description, which gives the champion Ultimate Galek and the champion Zargala at level 25, as well as a lot of resources to level them up. This is the latest bonus we give to newcomers to the raid. Do not miss out on this exclusive set that will help you level up. Well, as I said, this champion is not very good. Let's move on. Legendary, great. This seems to be a good champion with good ratings. Let's take a look at his abilities. A1 attacks the enemy and has a 20% chance to reduce the effect of buffs on the enemy. A2 applies a 60% defense buff to all allies for 3 turns, then attacks an enemy and has a chance to stun them. He also has an increased chance to apply stun to an enemy with more than 2 buffs. A3 attacks all enemies and has a high chance of inflicting provocation for 1 turn. It also applies a debuff attack to the enemy if that champion has a debuff defense. The fourth ability is a passive ability that increases the defense of all allies by 10% based on the defense of that champion. There is also an aura that increases the defense of allies in the tower by 34%. Another legendary! Well, let's not look at this champion. You don't need to, honestly. Their abilities are so situational and so specific to a boss using freeze that, well, honestly, they're not very good. Epic. Even more epic. Well, Ultimate Galek is not bad. Oops! Finally! Trunda Guilt Mallet! Finally, guys, I haven't had Trunda all this time, and here she is summoned! The meta top DPS! Damn, the opening was 100% successful. Trunda paid all 10 shards, not the 18 shards I opened, but 10 Trunda paid off with a head start. Let's take a look at their abilities. A1 hits an enemy twice and has a high chance of applying stun for a turn. A2 actually hits twice, of course, when the ability is upgraded. The first hit hits one target and then hits all enemies, with 60% of the first hit distributed to all enemies. A3 attacks all enemies and also has a 70% chance to inflict stun for one turn and apply the HP burn debuff for 2 turns, if the enemy is under the effect of stun. And if the enemy is not under the effect of stun, they will be attacked again. The passive is also very cool. This champion gains resistance for every foe under the stun debuff, stacking up to 100. And this champion increases speed when the opponent is under HP burn, but only stacks up to 15. There is also a good aura that increases the attack of magic champions by 36% in all battles. This is a very good champion to have around as a top damage dealer. Epic. Another epic. By the way, the Rector Drath champion for PvE content is awesome, I would say. By the way, I opened 20 shards today, and somehow, I doubted my chances of getting this champion today. Well, I don't know. Let's look ahead. There are 80 shards left. Let's see how it goes. Legendary Queen Ava is also a good champion. Well, she is narrowly specialized. Suitable for the Spider's Den, she is good. Let's look at her abilities. A1 attacks the enemy and also has a chance to apply a debuff resistance to healing for 2 turns. A2 attacks the enemy twice, and if she kills with it, the enemy cannot be resurrected. She also has a small aura that increases the critical chance of all allies in all battles by 19%. Another legendary hero! I wouldn't say it's a good legendary hero, but let's see what the champion can do. It attacks one enemy and has the ability to make additional moves if the enemy has a Hex debuff. A2 attacks all enemies and has a high chance of inflicting Hex, as well as a defense debuff for 2 turns. A3 attacks all enemies, ignoring immunity and shield buffs on each target. If they have a Hex debuff, it applies an immunity buff to that champion for 1 or 2 turns, depending on whether the opponent has Hex. It resets its cooldowns when it kills a target with Hex. Cool. But this champion epic is very situational. Well, Vrask. Not bad, but situational. We will skip this epic right now. Legendary. The champion's ratings are not very good, but the champion himself is cool. He is worth watching for his abilities. A1 hits an enemy twice and applies regeneration to an ally under poison debuff. A2 removes the poison debuff from all allies, then heals them for 30% of their maximum health and applies shield to all of them. A3 applies 3 poisons to all enemies, and this buff cannot be removed or blocked. It also has a high chance of applying a buff block to all enemies for 2 turns. The passive reduces poison damage to allies, which is good, but very situational. And then you, the viewer, will ask what happened. And I will tell you that the power in my house suddenly went out and a huge part of the recording just crashed, with no possibility of recovery. It just morally killed me. The more surprising thing is that the video recording was not saved, but the audio recording somehow managed to be somewhat preserved, and those emotions, when I received them, I can convey to you through sound. Imagine an epic failure. I have already recorded 3 full episodes without any problems, but just when I needed to open the legendary shards, this happened. I just want to ask you for a little support. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel, because right now my motivation is at the lowest level and your support will save me. But the content has to happen, and you have to see what legendaries I've got. So I've gathered all the unrevealed legendary I got during the opening. Let's take a look at these champions. Legendary, wow, Michinaki. By the way, this is not a bad champion. This is one of the best champions you could get today. I'd say it's on the level of Trunda Guilt Mallet. Let's look at his abilities. A1 attacks the enemy and has a good chance to use health burn for 2 turns. With A1 health burn, it's a must. A2 attacks all enemies and has a high chance of applying a defense debuff for 2 turns, as well as a high chance of applying an attack debuff for 2 turns when the enemy is under Hex debuff. A3 attacks all enemies twice. The first hit removes all buffs from each target, and the next applies the Hex buff for 2 turns. Then we have a passive that allows allies to join in and deal high chance damage to the enemy whenever this champion attacks an enemy with the Hex debuff. The fourth passive increases the defense of all allies in combat by 30%. Good champion. Good abilities. If you equip him with accuracy and buff his critical hit, he becomes an excellent damage dealer plus debuffer. All in all, a good champion. Let's move on. Another legendary hero. This cool champion kinda reminds me of Arthas from World of Warcraft. Let's take a look at his abilities. He's also relatively good. A1 attacks the enemy and heals this champion for 20% of the damage dealt, so it already has some health stealing built in. It also has a good chance of extending the duration of debuffs on the foe for a turn. A2 attacks all enemies and has a high chance of removing 2 random buffs from all enemies, and also has a higher chance of removing all buffs from all enemies if there is another legendary hero in the group. A3 fully heals 1 ally and applies a damage block to all allies for 2 turns. The upgraded ability is that every time it is attacked, it has a high chance of applying a speed debuff to the enemy for 2 turns, and this chance is increased if there is a Genti the Giant in the party. He also has a passive skill that increases allied resistance by 60 in all battles. Not bad. A useful champion, by the way. He is rare and has only 500 ratings. So getting this rare champion is very lucky. Ooh, let's look at the legendary Tatsu and her abilities. Not many have them, but it's very interesting what she can do. A1 attacks the enemy twice. Each hit has a chance to transfer debuffs from her to the enemy. It also increases her turn meter. A2 attacks all enemies, has a high chance of applying resistance debuffs to all enemies, as well as sleep for 1 turn. It also fills up her turn meter. A3 attacks an enemy twice. Before the attack, she removes all debuffs from herself and takes all buffs on the enemy. Also applies a buff of attack and critical damage to herself for 2 turns if this attack kills the enemy. And the fourth ability, immunity to the sleep debuff, and also increases her accuracy and critical damage for every buff on the team. A good legendary, but again, too narrowly specialized. And I wanted to remind you, viewers, that if you like videos with openings of shards from me, be sure to press like, subscribe to the channel, and also click the bell to receive notifications about the release of new videos. Let's open the second half of the shards. And here is the next piece of the recording that I was able to restore. Here it is. So we skip 50 shards, skip all the epics, and just look at the legendaries. Let's go! Hehehe, an epic from the beginning that I already had, of course. Another epic I already had. And another epic I just skipped. About the legendary, not bad by the way. A1 attacks an enemy 4 times and also has a small chance of applying the defense debuff to the enemy for 2 turns. A2 attacks 4 times randomly, and each hit has a small chance of applying a parasite debuff. A3 attacks all enemies, reducing their turn meter by 15%, then attacks the target enemy. If anyone is killed by this foe, a resurrection block is placed on them. He also has a good passive. Whenever he is attacked and stunned, frozen, sleep, or provoked, he heals himself by 20% of his maximum health. He also refills his turn meter by 50%. The passive alone makes this champion cool, even legendary. Wow, this is a pretty good legendary too. Attacks 1 enemy, if the hit was critical, it attacks all enemies. A2 attacks all enemies, has a small chance to inflict stun for 1 turn, also has a chance to inflict an accuracy debuff for 2 turns. A3 attacks all enemies twice and reduces their turn meter by 25%. If upgraded, has a chance to inflict a speed debuff for 2 turns. It also has an aura that increases the accuracy of allies in dungeons by 90. Not bad. Well, a fragment paid off. Epic! Also epic, by the way, the Stag Knight. I didn't have it. Not bad. It will come in handy somewhere. Oh, what is this strange creature anyway? Oh, legendary. Probably a very specialized champion. Judging by his average ratings of 4 and 2, A1 attacks the enemy, also has a chance to inflict provocation for a turn, and puts a shield on that champion. A2 attacks all enemies, and also has a chance for an extra turn if the enemy has one of the listed debuffs. And every hit has a high chance of applying the leech debuff for 2 turns. A3 applies a protection buff to all allies for 2 turns and also applies ally shield to all allies except that champion for 2 turns. The fourth passive ability allows him to apply provocation to the enemy every time he is attacked. The aura increases allied health by 33% in all combat.
1 eternity later.
Another legendary champion! By the way, Toragi Deathbell is a decent champion. He is on my second account. Let's take a look at him. He's a support and damage dealer in one. A1 attacks the enemy and heals that champion for 10% of their maximum health. All damage is based on HP. A2 attacks all enemies and has a high chance to fill all allies' turn meters by 30%, and also has a chance to remove all debuffs from all allies. A3 applies a shield to all allies except itself. It also applies a buff to all allies for 2 turns. The fourth upgraded ability increases this champion's resistance by 20 and the defense by 10% when allies have the ally shield, and it also increases resistance by 15 and protection by 5%. And the coolest thing is that he counterattacks the enemy if there is a Shield of Allies buff on allies. It triggers every turn. And by the way, this champion was not on my main account. Yes! Finally! Alatreon! Thank you, Raid! Thank you! Finally, Alatreon Blademaster! Finally, 65 shards, guys! It took me 65 shards to get Alatreon! Finally, oh man, I'm going to calculate how much money I spent on this champion. $975! Well, let's see what he can do. A1 attacks the enemy and has a high chance of increasing the effect of buffs on allies for 1 turn, gives a defense buff and a shield to all allies for 2 turns. The shield is worth 30% of those champions' health. A3 removes all debuffs from all allies and applies a debuff block to allies for 2 turns. A3 fills the movement scale of allies by 5% each time they receive a debuff, and also heals the champion for 5% of their maximum health each time a buff is removed or expires. There is also a good aura that increases ally speed in dungeons by 30%. This is a cool champion that was really worth getting, but 65 shards for him? Well, sorry, that's out of the question, but you're here to see how I spend my money. Let's get on with it. This decent champion has proven himself in many places, so let's see what he could do. A1 attacks the enemy 3 times and has a small chance to remove a buff from the enemy. A2 attacks the enemy and also has a chance to apply a defense debuff and weakness for 2 turns. A3 attacks all enemies and reduces their turn meter by 100%. There is also an aura that increases the resistance of all allies in the arena by 90%. As an arena champion, this is really good. And of course, in PvE, where you need to lower the turn meter of the boss, this champion will come in handy. Oh, legendary! Well, hello! This is a top support. What else can I say? Let's see what it can do. By the way, this is one of the best supports you could get. Let's look at A1. He attacks the enemy and also removes a debuff from himself and applies it to the target, as well as a good chance to steal a buff from the target he's attacking. A2 applies the accuracy buff to all allies, then attacks all enemies and applies healing block to all enemies for 2 turns. It also has a high chance of buffing these enemies for 2 turns. By the way, there is a caveat here. If he attacks demons, undead, or revenants, they cannot resist these debuffs. A3 heals all allies for 30% of their maximum health, then applies a defense buff to allies for 2 turns. If more than 4 allies are alive, he applies a shield to them. He also has an upgradable passive skill that removes defense and weakness debuffs each turn. He also has an aura that increases allied accuracy by 50 in all combat, making him a useful champion in many situations. And by the way, he is quite unpopular, and as you could see, 4.3, 4.8, 4.9 on Hydra. Oh my goodness, Harima! I didn't expect to see her here. Well, she's mostly an arena champion and a PvE damage dealer, so let's see what she could do. A1 attacks 1 enemy. She also has a good chance to put an attack debuff on the target and a small chance to put an attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns if she crits. A2 attacks an enemy 3 times. Each hit reduces the enemy's defense by 5%, stacks up to 30%, and each hit increases that champion's protection by 5%, stacking up to 100%. A3 attacks all enemies and applies provocation to them for 1 turn. This debuff cannot be removed or blocked if the champion's enemy is a demon. She also has a good passive that reduces the effects of ignoring enemy armor by 50%, and demon champions cannot critically hit her, and she will not hit demons with weak attacks. It also has an aura that increases the resistance of all allies in the arena by 80, a good champion that is very useful both in the arena and in PvP in general. It is also a defense champion, so it is easy to equip and use. Well, it's time to summarize the statistics. The game promises us 88% for epics and 12% for legendaries. For today's video, I got 19 legendaries and 81 epics. Turns out that legendaries took the lead and I ended up with 7 more chances to get a legendary. It's especially cool that I got really good champions to use in the game and to have fun with. Thanks, Raid! Thanks, Plarium, for Alatreon. I finally got some champions from the collaboration, because I'm just too lazy to participate in Fusion. If you like this video, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, guys, like, and hit the bell. If you have good activity, I will definitely make a new season of shard openings. By the way, those of you who guessed how many legendaries I will get are just beautiful, because guessing the number 19 is still a feat. You are great. Thank you for your activity in watching all these episodes with me and for watching my openings. I am very grateful to you, and on this positive note, I bid you farewell. And here are a few videos I recommend you watch. Goodbye, everyone!